This is the fourth in a series of 5 videos where I'm reviewing my 10 entrepreneur high leverage points. In this video, I'm going to review the 2 investing high leverage points, tech stack investments and equipment and facility investments. 50 years ago, there were no personal computers. There was no internet, there were no smartphones, there was no GPS, there was no 5G network, there was no cloud, there was no Internet of Things, and there were no apps. You've got to wonder how anything got done in this technology void. Today there are apps and software as a service subscriptions for almost every company activity. And if there is an app gap, it will likely be filled soon. Apps have the power to leverage your high leverage points because first, apps often have a high leverage approach or best practice baked in. Second, apps are mandatory for some activities because these activities can only be performed digitally. Some of these activity apps are so highly specialized with such a volume of features that they take months or years to master. Third, apps are used to automate functions to save time and improve data gathering, data retrieval, and report generation. With a well-designed app, you can do a lot quickly with much less effort than doing the same thing without using the app or trying to put something together with Google Sheets or Excel. Team members should always be asking the question, how can what I'm doing now be done with more precision, more process automation, more data capture and retrieval, more speed, and with better reports and analytics? If an app can be brought on stream that will achieve some or all of these performance improvements, it should be considered for investment. If you have a function that is begging for an app, but there is no app in the market that fills the bill, and you have a DevOps team available, either in-house or under contract, you should look into getting the app built. Apps fall into 3 categories. Universal apps that are used throughout a company, such as time tracking, expense tracking, file storage, retrieval, and sharing. Then there are department-specific apps for marketing and sales, bid and tender, purchasing and fulfillment, production and service scheduling, such as make to stock and assemble to order, make to order, project management, fleet management, safety programs, quality programs, and human resources programs. Then there are technical apps that are used for specific activities, computer numerical controlled drilling and routing, digital drafting and design, machine learning for construction and agriculture equipment, robotic manufacturing, autonomous vehicles, and CGI motion picture production, to name a few. Now I'm going to talk about how you can get exponential leverage from your apps by cross-pollinating them. There are 2 cross-pollination steps. First, you can use application program interfaces or APIs to get apps to talk to each other. Say an expense tracking app with an API to your accounting app. Second, team members should know about all the apps that are being used in your company and what these apps do and the information that they provide. Here's a fundamental cross-pollination example from a make-to-order project-based company. Say you have a time tracking app that is measuring on a daily basis the crew time on each task and each of the projects that are in your backlog. The time tracking app data can be linked to the wage rates in your human resources app. This gives you the daily crew time and crew spend by task and project. This data is shared with the project management team, who link it to the work breakdown time and spend that is scheduled for each task on the project. Because the project management team measures the actual progress on each project task, they can see when the tasks are behind schedule, on schedule, or ahead of schedule. In comparison to the time that is projected in the work breakdown schedule, and they can see if the tasks are under budget, on budget, or over budget, in comparison to the spend that was projected in the work breakdown schedule. The daily crew time tracking and crew spend tracking also informs the bid and tender team. They can compare the actual data that is generated each day to the data they used in their original bids. This is particularly important for change order pricing and future bids for similar work. On the flip side, if the project management team and the bid and tender team are not aware of the daily crew time and spend tracking capabilities, they won't have the daily visibility of task and project's performance that all starts with the time tracking app. Now let's look at the second investment leverage point, equipment and facility investment. The nature of a company's operations dictates their portfolio of equipment and facilities. Every operation needs a portfolio of these assets to function. A bakery needs mixing equipment and ovens. A digital visual effects studio needs high-powered computers. An infrastructure construction company needs a fleet of trucks, trailers, cranes, and other specialized tools and equipment. A make-to-stock company has an investment in materials, work in process, finished goods inventory, and a make-to-order company doesn't have an investment in finished goods inventory. A company with a short sales to cash received cycle has a lower investment in working capital, cash, accounts receivable, and inventory than a company with a long sales to cash received cycle, such as an infrastructure construction company. The construction company may have a low investment in equipment as a percentage of the revenue that they'll earn. This happens when they've made the choice to rent or lease rather than buy the equipment that they'll use on a project, and the subcontractors that they employ supply their own equipment. In the case of an electronic manufacturing service company, there's a minimum threshold of sophisticated equipment required to provide electronic manufacturing services. EMS companies will be mid to large scale operations, and they're more likely to own their portfolio of assets and more likely to own their facility. A digital visual effects company may choose to operate in the cloud, or they'll choose to have on-site rendering and storage capabilities. Also, unlike construction and manufacturing companies, they have a choice of having their production crews working in studio or remotely. They also can choose to own their studio or rent their studio. Turnover, or sales divided by assets, is a more telling measure for companies that own most, if not all, of their asset portfolio. Companies in similar industries that rent most of their asset portfolio have a higher asset turnover than companies that own most of their asset portfolio. However, the return on assets, which is net income divided by assets, may be similar for both own their assets and rent their assets companies. The companies that rent their assets have less depreciation than the companies that own their assets. But of course, they'll have a constant rent expense. The companies that own their assets may have borrowed funds to buy the assets. They'll have an interest expense that the companies who rent their assets won't have. Regardless of choosing to rent or buy, companies should always be looking to improve the leverage that they get from their asset portfolio. There is so much innovation in the equipment that is available today that upgrades to an asset portfolio should always be considered for benefits such as improving precision, material control, processing speed, safety, power consumption, and reducing repetitive stress injuries and frustration. The payback is often quick, with a positive effect on return on assets and return on equity. This concludes my review of Entrepreneur Leverage Points 7 and 8, tech stack investments and equipment and facility investments. To like this video and subscribe to my Brant Friesen YouTube channel, click the links below. Also, I look forward to reading and responding to your comments. Feel free to let me know which topics are benefiting you and your teams and other topics that you'd like me to cover in upcoming videos. Click on this link to watch the 5th installment of my 5-part series of 10 entrepreneur high leverage points, where I cover the finance high leverage points, vendor relationships, and banking relationships.